I want to talk to you just very, very briefly this Palm Sunday afternoon. And my short message is entitled A Turning Point. A Turning Point. How many of you know that there was a turning point between Jesus's 3 years of ministry on the earth and then all of a sudden, crucifixion, right? Jesus kept saying for 3 years, my time has not come. My time has not come. The time is not here yet. The time is not here yet. Don't go around telling everybody, just keep this miracle between me and you and us and the high priest, but don't go spreading this message. My time has not yet come. But a turning point came. A turning point came, and I would argue that turning point came right before Palm Sunday. Right before Palm Sunday. And so several times in John chapter 7, the Gospel of John, in John chapter 7, in John chapter 9, in John chapter 10, it kept saying over and over again, a split was developing in the crowd. A split was developing in the group of people who were listening to what Jesus was teaching or who were witnessing what was going on. And then again, a split was developing between the Jews about all the words that he was saying. So everywhere Jesus went and everywhere he taught and all the miracles he did, there was a constant division. There was a constant splitting of opinions, right? There was the Democrats and the Republicans. There was the conservatives and there was the liberals, right? There was just a constant splitting of opinion of he must be demon possessed, or how could anyone be demon possessed be doing these wonderful works and miracles? And so there was constantly two camps of opinion about what was going on. But soon a turning point would come, right? So when there's two different sides, there's kind of a tension, right? So in our country of America, there's always this like tension between the political parties, right? And so there's not usually much progress made because there's always just this tension. It's kind of a half and half. But when a turning point comes, that means all of a sudden things get tilted. All of a sudden there's a majority, there's a bigger piece of the pie, right? What some people call 80% issues, right? Like 80% of the people want this, right? So now you have a turning point on an issue. Okay, we can finally make a decision. It's not just we're stuck in that tug of war. Well, it says, there was all these divisions over what he was doing, and Jesus told the Jews, he said, the deeds I am doing are what testify about me, right? Look at these great deeds. That's the testimony that I'm good. The works I'm doing are good, right? I'm a good tree producing good fruit. And then Jesus said, but the reason why you can't believe in me is because you're not my sheep. You're not my sheep. But then he goes on to say, I and the Father are one, right? So when Jesus said, I and the Father are one, he totally broke their blasphemy laws. He totally broke their speech laws. He totally did not censor himself here, right? He did not think about the politically correct thing to say, right? He infuriated the crowd. And so it says they picked up stones to throw at him, right? They were going to brutally murder him over his words, blaspheming, right? God. And so Jesus said these words. He said, I showed you many fine deeds that came from the Father. Which one of those deeds will you stone me for? Right? And then they said, we're not stoning you for fine deeds. We're stoning you for blasphemy and for making a mortal like yourself into a god. And so more words were exchanged back and forth. And it says they tried to seize Jesus again, right? And it says, but he slipped out of their hands and he went back across the Jordan and he stayed over there, right? So if you have an angry mob of people wanting to kill you over your words and over your blasphemy of their religion, you're going to stay as far away from that as possible, right? You're going to get away from the angry crowd that wants to murder you. And so Jesus went over across the Jordan and he stayed over there. And then it says in John 11, Mary and Martha, right, they had a brother named Lazarus, and Jesus loved all three of those family members dearly. And it says these sisters, Mary and Martha, sent word over to Jesus, right? Jesus had left. He had gone over across the Jordan River. They sent word over there to Jesus saying, your friend Lazarus, who you love and care about, he is sick. And so it says that when Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, now he's thinking, oh, okay, right? He just left to save his life from the angry mob. And it says Jesus still continued to stay over there for 2 more days. And then he said to his students, let's go back over there. Let's go back across the Jordan. Let's go back to Judea. And his students said, Rabbi, the Judeans were just trying to stone you to death, and you're gonna go right back over there and face the angry mob again, right? In other words, you're gonna go over there and risk your life to go see Lazarus because he's sick. And Jesus said, look, my friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I'm gonna go over there and wake him up, right? And then he says, okay, Lazarus has died, right? Because they didn't get it. Lazarus has died. Now let's get over there and go to him. So Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus so much that he was willing to risk his own life to travel back to the angry mob, and so that he could come and lay his hands on Lazarus. And it says Thomas said to the other students, let us go and die with him, right? So everyone is looking at this as this is the pinnacle moment, right? We're going to go back across the Jordan, and this is it. We're taking our lives in our hands by going back over there where they want to stone us to death for their blasphemy laws, right? And they're all saying, we're ready to go with you, Jesus. We're ready to go with you. We're ready to die with you, right? And it says that Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, they lived over in a town called Bethany. And it was only 2 miles from Jerusalem, so it was pretty much a walking distance, right? We used to live in a small town called Wallace, Texas, and it was, I think, about a 3-mile drive to get over to the post office and that one flashing red light and the little convenience store, right? Little 3-mile jaunt. It would have been a little bit of a walk. But here it says, because Bethany and Jerusalem were only 2 miles apart, a bunch of the Jews had come over to Mary and Martha to offer their condolences, and they were at the house taking care of them because their brother had passed away. So they're having this whole time of fellowship and mourning, just as we normally do when someone we love passes away. Yeah. And then it says Martha approaches Jesus when he's on his way over there, and he says, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. And Jesus said these words to Martha. He said, I am the resurrection and the life, right? He said, your brother will rise again. And Martha said, yes, I understand. He will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection. Right. In other words, you're not waiting for the resurrection on the last day. The resurrection is here. I am the resurrection and life. And Jesus said, whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die ever. Do you believe that, Martha? And Martha said, yes, Lord, I am convinced that you are the anointed Son of God come into this world. And then here comes Mary, her sister, and she has the exact same phrase. Lord, if you had only been here, my brother Lazarus would not have died. This would not have happened. And Jesus, this time around, he doesn't give an explanation. It just says he sees Mary crying. He sees all those Jews around her. They're all crying and they're all mourning and everybody's going crazy. And it says Jesus went into an upheaval of the spirit. He went into an upheaval of the spirit and he stirred himself up. he stirred himself up and he said, okay, where have you put him? Where is Lazarus? I am ready to go. Where is he? Right? Where have you put him? And then here, Jesus he's in this upheaval of emotion. He's stirred up. And it says Jesus wept. And how many of you know there was again a split in opinions, right? People observing are like, wow, look at this empathy. He really loved Lazarus. He really is an empathetic person. And I just saw this little monologue by Bill Maher on his, I guess, late night talk show. I saw it on X last night, and he was giving this monologue about how he went to the White House and had a little private dinner and tour of the White House with Trump and all that. And he was giving his personal recount of the experience. And he said, Trump in person was not anything like how you see him when he gets up at the podium and when you see him online. He's like, when you see him personally, he's just this like personable, funny, considerate, empathetic person. He's all these things which you wouldn't expect. Right. And so it says they're looking at Jesus weeping and they're like, wow, this Jesus figure who's so controversial, who's so polarizing, who's such a divisive figure, wow, look at this. He's got emotion, he's got empathy, he's got tears. He really cared for this person. He really cared for this Lazarus. And then, of course, it says, while others were like, whatever, right? If he was who he said he was, he could have done something. He could have stopped this from happening, right? So there's always the cynics. And so it says, Jesus, while he's still in this emotional and spiritual upheaval, he comes to the tomb, right? They bring him. Here is where he's laying. Here is where we put him. And it was a cave, right? So a dugout place in the rock, and there was a stone blocking the entrance. And Jesus said, take that stone away. So we always think of the cave and the stone as of Jesus' resurrection. But here we have a little bit of a foreshadowing with Lazarus. Right. Jesus said, roll that stone away. And Martha said, Lord, Lord, he's going to be smelly now. He's already been gone for 4 whole days. And the Jews had a custom. They believed that after 3 days, that person was, okay, they're officially gone. There's no hope that they're going to wake back up or whatever, right? It's been 4 days. It's confirmed. He is gone. There's going to be a stench. And so Jesus says, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And so Jesus shouted at the top of his voice and said, Lazarus, come out here. And it says Lazarus comes out of the cave and he is completely bound, hand and feet with bandages, and his whole face is covered. So like we imagine a mummy, right? A mummy coming out. He comes out and Jesus says, untie him and let him go. Now, this was a major turning point. Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead after 4 days being gone, this was a major turning point, because it says many of the Jews who had come to see Mary and Martha to offer their condolences, many of the Jews were there for this miracle. Many of the Jews were there and they firsthand witnessed and saw Jesus call Lazarus out of a tomb. Right. They witnessed what had happened and they began to believe in him. Many began to believe, right? So now it was turning into, instead of a 50-50, now we've got an 80%, right? We've got an 80% kind of an issue, right? There's still a split, because it says even though, wow, many people were there and witnessed Lazarus coming out, and many people believed in Jesus over this, it still says that there was a percentage of people who decided to go to the Pharisees and report and tell them and snitch and tell them what had just happened. Right? So there was still that fray of people who were not believing. And so, just like that night when Jesus was arrested in the garden and they came together for their meeting, in the same way, they had a special meeting, right? When they got this news about all these Jews, they witnessed Jesus calling Lazarus out, and he's coming out of the tomb all wrapped up. It says the high priest and the Pharisees got together. They assembled in a council. They had a special meeting. Right. And they started talking, right? This is a turning point. This is a turning point. And they said, what are we going to do about this fellow who works all these wonders? If we let him go on like this, they'll all believe. If we let this continue, if we let him continue doing these miracles, these signs and these wonders, not only as the, what do they call it, their likability scale, oh, this many people approve of what they're doing, and all that. Not only are his poll numbers going up, not only is his approval rating going up, but they're like, we see the trajectory here. If we don't do something to stop this, everyone, they will all believe before it's over. We have to put an end to it. So this whole raising Lazarus from the dead was actually going to usher in Jesus' own death. So when Jesus came back, his disciples thought Jesus is taking his life into his hands because they're going to pick up those stones and try to stone him again. But we think, oh, well, that didn't happen. But in reality, Jesus did risk his life when he came back to raise Lazarus, because this was a tipping point. This was the point. This was the turning point where they said, we have to stop this. And so it did ultimately lead to Jesus's own death. They said they will all believe in him. And guess what's going to happen when they all believe? The Romans are going to come in and they're going to take away our land and our people. The Romans will come in and get rid of us, right? They're going to blow us out of here because this new thing has come up, and that's going to be the majority view of the country. They're going to, right? When one idea comes up, guess what? Another idea comes down, right? If you're all about freedom and all of that, guess what? We're going to support the oppressive people, that goes down, right? So when one idea rises, the other goes down. And so Caiaphas, the high priest, not even realizing that he was speaking words from God's own mouth, he said, it's better for one person, Jesus, to die than for all of our people to be killed by the Romans, right? So it wasn't just like, oh, well, what Jesus is doing is wrong or bad. It was, if this whole thing continues and this becomes the majority view, if this takes over in our society, we're all going to be run out of here like rats, like roaches, right? And so a lot of times it's not necessarily that people are against a certain view or something. It's that they know, well, if people begin to value family, if people begin to value marriage, if people begin to value morality, if people begin to value family and tradition and value God and the church and all these other things, what's going to happen? If that rises, then their approval of the other things goes down. And then instead of you and perversion being glorified, you'll be scattered. Right? You and those ideas will be scattered and rejected. And so that's why people fight against it. So here the high priest says it's better for him to die than for all of us to get blown out of here. Right? And so there's a turning point. There's a turning point because it says from that day on, after Lazarus was raised, and some of those Jews went back to the Pharisees and said, this is what happened. And we all saw it with our own eyes. And a bunch of people, the tide is turning. The culture is turning. The pendulum is swinging. Right. They said they had that private meeting. And it says from that day on, they made the decision and they started to plot to kill Jesus. They started the serious plotting at this point. And so instead of Jesus coming into the temple and the synagogue every day and walking around openly teaching and all that, it says, after this point, everything changed. Jesus did not walk around openly among the Jews anymore. It was no longer safe for him to come out publicly, right? Because of those angry mobs. And so this was a turning point. And it says that Jesus went away again, right? Just like he had gone before when they tried to stone him. Well, now they're plotting seriously to kill him again. He goes away out into the country near the desert to a town called Ephraim, and he stayed over there with his students. And this Jewish Passover was about to come. Last night at sundown was the beginning of Passover, right? And so while all this turning point is happening, it's right here, right, where we're celebrating Palm Sunday and Passover. And so it says many people were going to go up to Jerusalem before the Passover festival in order to seek a blessing. And how many of you know, if you hear all these wild stories about a man, a prophet, going around healing people and raising people from the dead, that is invaluable. And everyone not only wants to get over there and see it and witness it with their own eyes so that they can take the pictures, so that they can take the viral videos, so that they can go get their clout and tell everybody they saw it. But how many of you know most people have some sort of problem, right? Most people have some sort of issues, right? We all have issues. So everybody's thinking, not only do I want to witness this, but I want to get over there and see if maybe a little bit of that miracle dust can sprinkle on me, and maybe my issues can go poof and go away too. And so many people were going up to Jerusalem before the Passover, and they wanted a blessing. And so who were they looking for? Right? They weren't looking for the high priest. They weren't looking for the canon lawyers. Where's my blessing? Lay it on me. Whoo! Blow on me. No, they were going around looking for Jesus. And it said they were in the temple talking to one another, whispering, do you think he'll have the nerve to show up for this festival? Do you think he'll come out and make a public appearance, right? So after, for example, a few months back, or was that even a whole year? I don't know. But remember when an assassination attempt was made on President Trump's life over in Butler, Pennsylvania? Well, that was right before the Republican National Convention, right? I think the convention was, a couple days after that? And so everybody thought, well, he just had this attempt on his life. Surely he won't come out in public. Surely he'll be scared. Surely if you'd be traumatized over what happened, and surely you'd be hiding in a basement or a bunker, and surely you'd be having panic symptoms, and you would not want to come out into a crowd or come on stage. But it says he just like President Trump, immediately comes and shows himself publicly at the Republican National Convention, and everyone was shocked. Right? And they said, wow, the energy and the excitement at that convention was just off the charts, higher than they had ever experienced before, right? Because of that boldness, because of that defiance, because you tried to scare me, I overcame, right? And so here they are saying, do you think now that there's an open plot for Jesus to be killed, and he's quit coming around, he's quit walking around openly in front of the Jews, do you think he'll show up at the Passover festival? Do you think he'll make a public appearance? And so it says the high priests and Pharisees at that point had already given orders that anyone who knew where Jesus was should alert them. They already said, you are now an obligated reporter. If you see Jesus, if you hear about Jesus, if you hear a rumor of where he is or where he's at or what he's doing, you must tip us off. You must call our hotline. You must let us know. You must alert us, right? Now you are obligated to report, right? If you see your neighbor come outside without a mask, you better report them, right? And so here they are. Here's another turning point. Now there's an obligation on the people. You've got to report if you even see him, right? So everybody's like, wow, is he going to defy these orders? Is he going to actually come and make an appearance at the festival? And so it says that 6 days before the actual Passover was going to happen, Jesus had come back across, right, over to Bethany to see Mary, Martha, and raise Lazarus from the dead. And it says, while he was over there in Bethany, after he had raised Lazarus, and all of the people are witnessing this crazy event, it says that they gave a special dinner. They gave a special dinner in honor of Jesus, and Lazarus was sitting right there in attendance, right? And so it says a great crowd of the Jews came out to see this special dinner that was being held in honor of Jesus, because not just that they wanted to see Jesus, but now everybody wants to lay their eyes on Lazarus.
Right.
Lazarus was there. Lazarus was now this highly honored guest. That's the guy who'd been dead 4 days and came out wrapped up. Right? Here's a testimony to Jesus's power and Jesus's validity as the true leader, as the true king, right? As everything that he had been claiming to be. Here's a living witness right here, sitting next to him at the table, and everyone can see it. And so Lazarus was there at that special dinner. And we know that's where Mary had come and broke the spikenard and cried and washed Jesus' feet and all that. And it says this was a turning point also, the whole Lazarus thing, because it says the high priests were plotting not just to kill Jesus. The high priests were now plotting to kill Lazarus too, right? Lazarus is now a walking miracle. Lazarus is now a walking billboard for vote for Jesus. Vote for Jesus, right? Lazarus, this miracle, is turning troves of people towards Jesus. So it says they were plotting not just to get Jesus, they intended to kill the miracle. They intended to kill Lazarus too. Right? So again, with the political analogy, because that's kind of fresh in my mind, I think of President Trump and Elon Musk hanging out together. And how many of you know that when Elon Musk comes around and he started supporting Trump, then not only did the death threats come for President Trump, but the death threats started coming for who? Elon Musk. Because Elon Musk was influencing a lot of young men and different people, right, in the direction of President Trump. So now Elon Musk is a walking billboard for Make America Great Again, right? And so now he's sharing that burden. He's sharing that threat, right, of the people who did not like Jesus. And that's the situation Lazarus was in as well. And it says, this is because on account of Lazarus, many of the Jews were going off and believing in Jesus. So again, this whole Lazarus situation was a turning point. It was a major turning point. And it says, the next day, the crowd that was there for the Passover festival, on hearing that Jesus was coming, remember they were debating, do you think he'll show up? Do you think he has the nerve to come and show up publicly? Don't you think he's scared, right? If people tried to stone you, you'd be scared and you'd be hiding. And then when they got the word, oh, he is coming. Oh, this is off the charts. Oh, this is lit, right? Jesus is basically over there saying, fight, fight, fight. I'm coming. Right? I'm coming to the festival. And so it says Jesus was coming to Jerusalem for the festival after all. And so when they got the words, they were so excited, right? Because this is a sign that Jesus is overcoming, right? Jesus is not cowering. This is not the end. Instead, Jesus says, I know you put out the word on me that people are obligated to report, that people are obligated to call the tip line, that people are obligated to turn me in, but I'm going to show my face publicly anyway. So now Jesus, wow, when you show that boldness and that bravery and that courage, and you overcome the threats and you say, I'm going to continue on anyway, people were over the moon. People were excited beyond belief, right? Because now they said, hooray! Bless him who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel, right? I heard somebody who, maybe it was Jordan Peterson, I can't remember. But anyway, somebody said, or maybe it was Tucker Carlson. He said, the leader is always the person with the most courage. Whoever has and shows the most courage, they are automatically the leader, right? And so that's why when a bunch of people saw the attempt on President Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then he gets up and he says, fight, fight, fight. That's why a lot of people said, oh, he just won. He just won the race. And why did they say that? Because he showed that he didn't just run and cower, but he showed, I'm going to keep fighting. I am brave. I am bold. And so in that moment, you're seeing, wow, this person is braver than all the rest of us. And so when we see that brave person, that is the leader of the group, right? Just like David went in front of Goliath, even though he was younger and smaller and shorter and he wasn't even part of the military, he got lifted up because he was the bravest one there. And so now when Jesus says, I am coming to the festival, I am going to show my face publicly, the crowd erupts. The crowd erupts. And it says they got the branches off the palm trees and they came out to meet him, right? They're shouting, whoop, whoop. You know, if Arsenio Hall was there, he'd be like, whoop, 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 right? They were there with the palm trees and they were saying, hooray, hooray, bless him who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel, right? He has proven that he is the king. He has proven that he's the Son of God. He's proven that he is the legitimate leader. And Jesus found a donkey and sat down on it. And so the whole crowd of people there hollering and hooray and waving the palm branches, right? And that's what we're celebrating Palm Sunday about. The whole crowd was there bearing witness to the fact that they had seen Jesus call Lazarus out of a tomb. It says the crowd of people was bearing witness, and the people who were there doing all this with the palm branches, they were the ones who had been with Jesus when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead. And so this whole situation of raising Lazarus from the dead was a turning point. It was a turning point. And so Jesus traveled on his donkey into Jerusalem, showing his face publicly in defiance, right? He was like the fighter walking into the UFC and everybody's cheering and going crazy, right? It says that is why the crowd was there to meet him. So somebody said to me the other day, I don't even know what this whole Palm Sunday thing is all about. And here in the Word of God, it says the whole Palm Sunday thing was because the crowd was there because of the Lazarus miracle. They saw it, they witnessed it, their hearts were turned. They saw it with their own eyes. There was a walking billboard hanging out with Jesus at the dinner, right? All these Jews had come to console Mary and Martha. They witnessed the whole thing. They saw that he had been dead for 4 days. They followed her to the tomb. They saw Jesus call him forth. And it says that is why the crowd was there to meet him. They had heard about him performing that miracle. So raising Lazarus from the dead was a turning point. And it had a domino effect of all of these things, right? The secret meeting of the high priest and the council, and the official plot, and the official statement. If you see him now, you got to report him, right? And all that. And so it says, the Pharisees are looking at this Palm Sunday where the crowd is going crazy, ushering Jesus into Jerusalem for the festival, that he's showing his face, that he's so brave publicly. And the Pharisees are there watching what's going on right in front of them. And they said, there went the world. There went the world. All trooping off behind him. Right? Just like they said, if we allow this to continue, they will all believe. They will all follow him, right? And when you follow this way, it means you quit following that way. Right. When you lift up this way of life, all of a sudden that other way of life falls out of favor. And they said, there went the world. Just as we had said, all the people are trooping off behind him. And then again, here's another witness to the fact that this was a turning point. It said, out of all those people that were coming up to Jerusalem for the special Passover festival celebration, the public event, even some Greeks were there. Even some Greeks were coming up to worship on the feast day. And the Greeks approached Jesus' disciples and they said, Sir, we want to see Jesus, right? This word had spread out all over the place. And now even the foreigners were like, we've got to see this Jesus. We are here to worship. And then this was the tipping point. When the Greeks came and said, we want to see Jesus, and the disciples came and told him, like, hey, there's some people here, they want to see you too. And then Jesus said, the time has come. Jesus said, the time has come. So for 3 years he had said, it's not my time. The time is not yet come. Don't go around telling everybody yet. Let's keep a lid on it. Let's keep it simmered down here. Don't tell people who I am. Don't get something started here. When the Greeks came and said, we want to see him too, Jesus said, the time has come. The time has come for the Son of Humanity to be glorified. The time has come. Jesus knew this is the turning point. This is the turning point. And Jesus said, if a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it produces a great crop. The one who doesn't care about his life in this world will keep it safe forever. Right? Just like how people say, decades from now, people will still remember Elon Musk and his, spaceships and his, things he's inventing and, creating and these massive changes and all that, right? In other words, they're saying this person's so great, they're going to go down in the history books. They're going to be remembered for a long time. Kids are going to be learning about them in elementary school, right? What they did and who they were and how they changed our world. Well, here, Jesus is saying, if you don't care about your life and you just go for it, you just jump in the pool head first, you just ride straight into the angry mob that wants to stone you, and you just ride in publicly on a donkey, if you just go in head first, right into the snake pit, it is there that your name is going to be remembered forever. It's there that you will be kept safe in this world for life everlasting. And Jesus said, this is why I have come to this hour. Right? So the Greeks coming and saying, we want to see him. Jesus said, this is it. This is the point. This is it. This is the turning point. Now it is going to happen. Now is the big crescendo. Now what do you call those?
Symbols.
The cymbals. Now the cymbals are banging. Here I already have the very first fruits of even the Greeks coming, right? This message is spreading all over, even to the Greeks. And Jesus said, when my grain of wheat falls, it's going to multiply. And because I don't care about my own life, because I was willing to travel back into Jerusalem, because I was willing to show my face publicly, because I was willing to defy the threats, now I will be kept safe for life everlasting. This is what I came to this hour for. And he said, now this is the judgment time for the world. Now the ruler of this world will be thrown out the door. And if I am raised high above the earth, right, showing that he was going to be crucified on a cross, if I'm raised high above the earth, I'm going to draw all people to me.
Yeah.
Not just all those Jews that are going to turn away from the Pharisees and the canon lawyers and all that. Not only just them, I'm pulling all people towards me, those Greeks and all the Gentiles from these other countries. If I go up here, my name, my fame is going to spread all across the world. And all the people are going to be drawn to me. And so, it says, before the feast of Passover, and mind you, Passover was that final meal that Jesus had with his disciples. Passover was when he washed their feet. Passover was when Judas dipped his bread in the cup at the same time as Jesus. Passover was when Jesus said, one of you here is going to betray me. One of you here is going to call the hotline. One of you here is going to turn me in for not wearing the mask when I walked out of my house. One of you here is going to betray me. Right? At that special dinner, that was the Passover dinner. And so it says, before the feast of Passover, knowing that the hour had come for him to pass out of this world and go back to the Father, Jesus had loved his disciples and all to perfection. He had loved those who were his own in this world. He loved them to perfection. And it says he washed their feet and all that. And then we know the rest of the story about he was betrayed and they went to the garden and they arrested him and all that came after. But today I just wanted to focus on this turning point. This turning point. And how for 3 years there was constantly these splits. Well, I believe. Well, I don't believe. Well, I mean, look at all the great things he's doing. Well, he's probably demon possessed. Well, there was always the cynics. There was always a split in opinion. There was kind of that tug of war. And then there was a tipping point that came. There was a tipping point that came when he said, I and the Father are one. And they said, we're going to stone you for blasphemy. And then Jesus went out, and then because of his friend Mary and Martha and Lazarus, he came back. And oftentimes people act like, well, why did Jesus stay over there for 2 days and he just let Lazarus keep being dead? Why did he just chill out? And they act like Jesus was just having a good time and he just didn't care, right? Almost never do they emphasize the fact that his life was at risk. That they were just trying to murder him. A vicious crowd was trying to stone him. And so by coming back for Lazarus, he was putting his life at risk. And his disciples also knew if we go back with him to go see Lazarus, we are putting our own lives at risk. So Jesus overcame by coming back. He overcame that threat the first time.
Right.
And then after he raised Lazarus and they had that meeting saying, that is it, we cannot let this continue. And he stopped showing up all the time in public. But when the big festival came, he overcame a second time. And he rode the donkey into Jerusalem, showing his face publicly. And all these people, right, because so many of the Jews had been there consoling Mary and Martha, and they witnessed this miracle. It says these people, because so many Jews had witnessed, now, right, the majority were turning towards him. His favorability rating was rising in the polls. And so they gathered around him, and they were doing all this praising, and here's the King of Israel, right? They were pumped up beyond belief for Jesus to overcome and show his face at the Passover festival. Jesus proved, I am the leader, right? What do they say? With sticks and stones, you may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, or whatever, right? So the point is, Jesus was overcoming. Jesus proved, I am the legitimate leader. And all these people had come around on Palm Sunday with their palm branches because they were cheering him on, that he was going to go show his face at the festival in open defiance. In open defiance. The order had already been put out. If you spot him, you have to report it. If you spot him, you have to tell us we are coming to seize him, right? And so here they were cheering him on, just like they said that Republican National Committee after that assassination attempt. Well, the energy, the excitement was higher than it had ever been, right, for anything like that before. Right? And no doubt, because when you show that bravery, it attracts people. It shows you're the legitimate and rightful one, here to lead us forward into war, here to lead us into battle, here to lead us forward, right? The fearless warrior. And so it was a turning point. And so I just wanted to share that with you today about Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday was right there in the middle of the turning point sandwich. Palm Sunday was right there. It was the pinnacle. It was the crescendo. It was the cymbals going off. And it was also that moment when the Greeks came and Jesus had that realization, this is it. This is the tipping point. This is the point at which my wheat is going to fall to the ground and die, and the crop is going to spread. This is the point, right? Where if I don't care about my life and I'm willing to charge forward anyway, that my life will be saved for life everlasting. And so Jesus gave us all an example. He said, follow me. Don't value your life. Be willing to plow forward anyway. And so, I mean, how many times have you ever heard Palm Sunday is an example to plow forward anyway? Palm Sunday is an example to defy threats. Palm Sunday is an example to say, I'm going to show my face publicly no matter what you try to threaten me with. I am an overcomer, right? And so Palm Sunday is a celebration of true, legitimate leadership. True, legitimate kingship. And that's why they were all waving their branches and saying, hooray, bless him who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel, right? The King of Israel. So the people who were there and witnessed that Lazarus coming forth, they said, this is the King of Israel, right? Not only that they saw that miracle, but here he is coming to ride the donkey straight into the serpent's pit, straight into the net, right? Straight into the net that had been laid for his feet. He was not afraid. He was not trying to save his own life. Otherwise, he would have run his campaign from the basement. Otherwise, he would have said, I'll just send out my disciples to the festival. I'll stay over here. No, Jesus came out publicly on the donkey and rode in, not silently. He didn't say keep it silent. No, they were making a big ruckus, showing his legitimate leadership. So this was a turning point. So on this Palm Sunday, I want you to think about this was a turning point. This was a turning point. Jesus showed his love when he came back to that city where they tried to stone him. He showed his love when he came back for Lazarus. And that's also a picture of what he's done for us. Jesus showed his love for us when he came back into Jerusalem. He faced the evil powers for us on our behalf. He showed his love when he came back and he got on the donkey and he rode into Jerusalem and he showed his face publicly. He faced off the enemies, right? Like President Trump sometimes said, I'm standing between you and them. They're not after me, they're after you. And so that's the same thing, like an army general, a president of a country. Leaders are there standing in the very front for their people. Out of love, they put their own life on the line, right? So I think they said that being a president is one of the most, or leading a country is one of the most dangerous jobs you can have. You're literally putting yourself out in front of your people. And if somebody wants to get to your people and they want to get to your country, they have to get rid of you first. And so Jesus showed his love when he came, not just for Lazarus, but when he came again to Jerusalem, and he was willing to face off, and he was willing there to be turned in, right? And the crescendo happened. And Jesus said, now is the time for the judgment on those people to come. But guess what? When the time comes for the judgment on those people, it's also the time of our resurrection, right? Like he said to Martha, you're not looking for Lazarus to come up at the end of time on the resurrection day. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am here, right? So when Jesus shows up, he's saying, I am the resurrection and I am here. All right, thank you for watching today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you back here again on Easter Sunday, next Sunday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you. Love.